Hi,
Okay.
Kristel.
Hi, Kristel. That's so funny. Okay, I am so excited to have Kristel Johnson here today because she's my neighbor. She lives like right there. I can see her house from here, and I'm just really excited because for me, it was just so like comforting to know that you guys were kind of going through the same thing, almost like the exact same time. Like I know,
Right.
and you're going to explain a little your whole story, but it had been this whole faith crisis, faith transition was kind of like it started for you
for me
for a
when
few
we
years.
moved here.
Yeah. And so Kristel had just moved in 2 years ago, right?
Okay.
She had just moved in, and Sean was wait, so you just moved in, and we were just leaving to go up to our
We were
Draper
just
house.
going back to the Draper house, and
But
we
we
had
had-
just reconnected.
Yeah. And we had so Sean and Brady were friends from
8 years previously when we
Yeah.
lived in Bountiful. Sean and Brady,
Her
had
husband.
connected. Yeah,
Yeah.
Brady, my husband, had connected that way. And then it just, when we were looking at homes, we were in the backyard, in the back of the HOA, and Sean comes out and he had the beard, and we didn't recognize him for a little bit. And we're like, "Wait, we know you," and I'm like, "Are you here to scare off any buyers?" And he's like, "Well, it just depends on," and so that's how we kind of reconnected that way.
Yeah.
And I knew of your want to be balanced mom, and
Yeah,
so I
because
was
we
familiar.
had the whole Jody Moore in common. We were both part of
Jody
her.
Moore.
She's a LDS life coach, so
Yes,
we
yes.
had that connection instantly. We're like,
And
oh my
thought
gosh, you're
work.
part of Jody Moore's.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we loved that.
Yeah, and we love to always evolve and
Yeah.
learn and grow, and so like I loved to connect with you, like what books are you reading, or what
Yeah.
are you doing, or how new ideas and new ways of thinking. But the Jody
Yeah.
Moore thing really
That was like our instant
it was
connection.
like our instant connection.
Yeah. So we left up to our Draper house, and you guys had just moved in.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get a chance to really talk to you much or get to know you more. We just had a few little conversations.
engagement,
And then soon after we left was right when I was like, okay, I'm going to be public about leaving the church. And then I did that podcast episode, and then posted, and you saw it,
And I saw it,
and
and
you
I listened
texted
to
me,
it, and I texted you
and I was like,
right
oh my
away.
gosh, when I saw you had texted me, I was like, oh no, what is she gonna say? Because I was nervous, because
Right,
you're my
right.
naiber, and it was still so
It's so
fresh.
raw.
Yes,
Right?
and you're more afraid to be open about that.
Right.
I'm now looking back, I'm like, why was I so afraid?
Well, because we didn't know better. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it was just we were doing the best we could.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we think back now, we're like,
Yeah.
Let
Let me make sure this is okay. I just thought I need to make sure this. I'm so
make
afraid
sure
of
the microphone
doing
is
this
working.
and not having it. So
Yeah.
okay.
So you had left, and then I had reached out to you because I'd been on my journey for about 2 years, and I just wanted you to know that I love you regardless, and that you have an ally. And I was I very much admired your courage.
I'm going to put this more in front of you
Okay.
because you're going to do
Sure.
most of the
Okay.
talking.
Sure. I admired your courage, and I was still trying to navigate the waters of transitioning for me. So, but how I got on that path, well, let me first say, okay, I'll try to do cliff notes here because I didn't have time. So I was married. I married very young, and was in a marriage for 16 years, and I had 4 beautiful daughters, and and then I was working for the church in the office of the 70 when in my marriage had gone up and down, and I had always wanted to be an obedient, obedient Latter-day Saint. And so anyway, when I was working with the general authorities, my mom and dad were on a mission. Wait, I should back up a little bit. Should I say a little bit from I grew up, I have 5 siblings.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a very loving LDS home, where my dad had always encouraged us to seek for the truth.
Yeah.
And that was something that I strived for, and we were we'd have family home evenings every every Monday, my dad would get us up in the mornings and we'd do scripture time and sing hymns. And we were just very religious, very in. And I never thought there was, like, I never had an option to think differently because this was just what I was taught.
Yeah.
And I was in and I believed it all. Like, I really believed it all. And so when my marriage, we'd have a lot of rough times, and I'd go to my parents and I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. And it was from the get-go, but they kept like, you made these covenants and you're the one that wanted this, and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, so it lasted for 16 years. They were on another mission. My mom and dad, they've served four missions. They've been MTC presidents, mission presidents. They've served in the area authorities. I mean, they're just very, very in. Yeah. And, so anyway, I finally, with my parents, I was done, and going through the divorce, with not having my parents there and working with the general authorities, they were very loving and kind towards me and not judgmental. I received a lot of counsel and wisdom, but from my bishop, with the divorce, I had so much shaming, so much blaming, all these sides. I didn't know that I became this topic of all of the councils and meetings, and and then he'd meet with my kids and tell my kids, I don't agree with what your mom.
Really?
It was really traumatic, and definitely would give me a reason to leave the church, out of bitterness, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so I go through the divorce, and Brady comes into my life rather quickly, and we get married, and he takes on the four daughters that we have, and Elder Rasband at the time. He was the president of the 70, and he just loved Brady, and he was like, I know you guys, because my family had a really hard time that we couldn't get married in the temple.
Oh.
Because we need, because
of you being sealed too.
Of the sealings and the time frame,
because you would have had to wait, right? Because Sean had the same thing. We had to wait.
You had to wait, and I'm like, wait, sealed. The very religion that I want to be married in the temple won't let me.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of shaming. There was a lot of shaming because of that. So, President Rasband, he just said, he just like, I love you too, and I would love to seal you too when that time comes. So I was like, sweet, and then when I had Brooklyn, Brady and I had our first one, then I no longer worked with the general authorities. But it was a beautiful experience with working with them, because I got to see the human side. I got to see all the mechanics of how the church operates and how different things, and I was really grateful for that time, and it was a good experience. Then I had a friend of mine, a very, very close friend of mine who I loved dearly, that she started questioning some things about the church history, and I was just like, I'm like, at first it scared me a little bit, because I was afraid we were going to lose that connection of what we believed in.
Yeah.
And so I was really sad. And then I was like, okay, wait. If there's, if what she is doubting if there's something there, every member of missionary, to the rescue. Yeah. I want to know what she knows, so then I can show her the truth.
Yeah.
Truth seeker.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So I finally got the guts, and it was the scariest. I remember sitting at my table in the kitchen, and I was sitting there like going, okay, am I ready to learn, and go down that path? And
so you were afraid to actually read.
I was afraid.
The information, but you kind of were like,
I was afraid.
Felt like it was important that you.
But I loved her.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I loved her so much.
That makes me emotional, because I wish more people would do that. Like, want to understand us so much, that they're willing to.
She's worth it.
Yeah.
She was worth it. And she still is today. So, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start with super safe things, which is what she did. So there's these 2 books that you can get from the Desert Book they're not on the bookshelves. You have to go and order and ask for them. So the first book that I read was Rough Stone Rolling, and it was all about the prophet Joseph Smith. And that's a big book. It's like 700 pages. So there's a lot of meat to that.
Yeah.
So, but the takeaways, there was 2 things there that disturbed me as I read that was when I was a little girl and I was in primary, I was shown pictures of how the Book of Mormon was translated. And I swore I had a testimony of the Urim and Thummim as that being the modality of how the Book of Mormon came to be. And I had a testimony on it, and I would bear it, and I would talk about it, and all that. And then when I read in the book that...
Sorry, do you remember where you were?
Yep. So it had confused me. I was very confused as to how someone could have a revelation, a personal revelation from God while being deceitful.
Yeah.
Because that goes against everything that the church teaches me,
Yeah.
So I really had a hard time with that. And then my close friend at the time, she and I were communicating, and then I was, I wanted to I had some questions myself, and she did too. And I was like, well, and first I asked my dad if he had read Rough Stone Rolling, and he did. And all this time I was trying, as I was learning some things, I was trying to, talk to my parents about it. But trying to, my dad, oh, that's just folklore. But it didn't feel like folklore. And the person that wrote the book was a church historian, and it's from Desert Book. Anyway, so what we decided with my friend is like, well, let's go to the source, because that's where I can find out the truth. And luckily at that time, the church historian, the general authority, or the church over church history at that time, was Stephen R. Snow. And I had interviewed with Stephen R. Snow to work in the office of the 70.
Okay.
And so I'd already had that connection with him, delightful, and worked with him. So I contacted his secretary and kind of let her know what was going on, and if we could meet with Elder Snow, that we had some questions. Now, the Elder Snow was just barely put into his position at that time, so I don't know if he really knew all of the church history, really. And so he brings along with him Richard Turley, who is the assistant church historian, and has been, he knows everything.
Yeah.
But I'd only read that one book, so the 2 things that I was talking with Elder Snow about, that I was, I just cried. I broke down and I cried to him about the translation of the Book of Mormon, and I just says, it really isn't fair, to be fed one narrative and then flip it, or all of a sudden change it, and then have people be okay with that. I was like, that's not, and he was empathetic, and he just said, well, that narrative would have been kooky, and but I'm like, but if it's the truth.
Yeah.
And then we were concerned about polygamy, so we wanted to talk about slush. So like, we just, we think it's demeaning to women. It just felt yucky. You know what I mean? So we're like, do we have to practice that? Is that something? What is your take? You know what I mean? And so when I walked away from that time with Elder Snow, I just was feeling relief about the polygamy and the celestial. And then I was at least, and then we had asked him about the gospel topic essays. We were like, why aren't these being promoted?
Yeah.
Why are you hiding these?
Yeah.
And, he said that they're rolling them out in these phases, that they're difficult topics. And obviously because all of the stuff in these gospel topic essays, and if you keep clicking on the footnotes, it's just going to take you deeper and deeper into the church history. Yeah. And it gets really messy, really messy. So anyway, then the next book I read was Mormon Enigma, again, through Desert Book. You can go and get that. And this was on the life of Emma. And my eyes were opened to all of the ways that Joseph Smith would, I just want to share, if I have time. There was two things that really, really hurt me from that book. So the first one was about, three things. Okay, so Fanny Algers, that she and Joseph were caught, and she was so young, and Emma didn't know, and, they were caught in the barn, and all of her cowdery, it just felt really yucky. And I was like trying, and it was just yucky. And then come to learn later that the sealing power that Joseph claims to have, the revelation, he didn't bring that into the timeline until 3 years after everything with Fanny. But wouldn't you think the sealing power should be restored first?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was really tough. And then the Partridge Sister story, where Joseph and Emma had taken in these two sisters, and room and board, and they had helped out a lot. And Joseph had secretly married them behind Emma's back, and all along trying to convince Emma to come along with polygamy, And so Emma finally says, okay, she finally concedes to practicing. She's like, but only if I get to pick who those are. And she picks the Partridge Sisters. Well, he's already married and sealed to them. What do? They have a mock ceremony. Yucky. Deceitful.
Yeah.
Out of integrity. They have this mock ceremony. Emma's clueless. And then Zina Huntington, she loved this boy named Henry, but Joseph had his eyes on her, and he had expressed that to her, but she says, no, I want Henry. I love Henry. No, thank you. And she married, and they asked Joseph Smith to marry them, and he says yes, but on the actual wedding day, Joseph is a no-show. Oh. Like, his feelings are hurt.
I didn't know that.
He was a no-show.
Yeah.
So they get married by somebody else, and then Joseph Smith sends Henry on a mission. Eventually he'll send him on several missions. I'm not sure which mission it was, but on one of those missions, he convinces Zina to marry him, to be sealed to him. And they do that, and then Joseph dies. And then Brigham Young comes along and fancies Zina. And he tells her, well, if you break your sealing, to Joseph Smith, and you be sealed to me instead, you will be granted even a higher degree of glory. I was like, what?
This is all in the Mormon Enigma book?
I don't know if that part is in the Mormon Enigma book, but when I started, it led me to go design In Sacred Loneliness. Yeah, In Sacred Loneliness is a book that's referenced all the time in the gospel topic essays. And it will tell these stories because these women need to be heard. They have a voice. They have, you know what I mean? But the church will never give them a voice because it doesn't fit the narrative that they're selling. So that made me really upset that Brigham Young could just, well, who cares about being a good person and earning your way of doing, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to give you the highest degree of glory, if you come and be sealed to me instead.
Like he has that power. Yeah.
And then I went to my dad and I asked him that. I was like, how, I was really mad actually because I'm like, that's not right.
Yeah.
And then,
what does your dad say though?
So he listened to me, but I don't think he really listened to me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, So my mom and dad, so then I asked my mom to read Mormon Enigma because I wanted to ask her questions. I wanted to understand it. I wanted, I'm like, these guys should know, you know what I mean? They're super in, they got it together. They know what they're doing. You know what I mean? So she read the book and, unfortunately after she read it, she didn't approach me, or it didn't go the way we're like, okay, Kristel, I read this book. What are your questions? She hated the book. She didn't like the way it made her feel. She sent me an email just, saying how horrible it made her feel and dark and all of this. And I'm just sitting there, well, like,
but that's like accurate information.
It's accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and then what was really hard for me was because I had to tell my mom, thank you for sharing that with me. But now you're not safe for me to talk to because I already know how you feel and that you're closed off. And I'm genuinely hurting for the truth. So hurting. She cried and she tried her best to like backpedal and be like, I want to be here for you. I want to do that. But I couldn't. It was really sad. And then, so then I read it In Sacred Loneliness, and then we went back, when we were with Elder Turley and Elder Snow, Richard Turley fed us all of these liners from the audio, from the Swedish Rescue audio, and none of it aligned with what was being taught in Mormon Enigma. So then I was getting even more confused because I'm like, well, I went to the source. And then we go back to the source again.
Yeah.
So my friend and I, we go back a second time, and that time Richard Turley wasn't there. It was just Elder Snow, and bless his heart, like he was just trying to pick up all these pieces. He just was thrown into this, and like all these pieces from the narrative being hidden, what I mean? And the whitewashing and all of that, So when we met with him, he was talking about the little bits of moments for Joseph, before, with his death and the whole, how he got into prison, from the churches, the narrative that the church had taught us. And people were feeling the Spirit all over in the room. And I was just getting more and more upset because in the story of Joseph Smith's martyrdom, it didn't mention why, that Joseph Smith had ordered the printing press to be destroyed, which was an illegal act.
Yeah.
You're not going to find that being told in there, because I think it's important to understand that if you want to, if you're going to gain a testimony about something, you know what I mean? You need to know, okay, well, you need to know all the facts.
Yeah.
Versus just this little bit, oh, he did this, there's no mention of all these other wives. There's no mention of why the mob is so upset with him, because he's been victimizing and deceit and all the, and manipulating these women. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Instead, it's like the angry mob, he's going to die a martyr because of, of what he believed in, and nonetheless, on the night, when he had escaped, before they were going to capture him, like, he was writing love letters to some of his other wives, oh, if Emma's over here, don't come, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's like orchestrating all this other stuff, but we're sitting in this, we're sitting in the Sunday school, and we're just hearing, just Joseph and Emma only, and him for the truth, dying, the martyr for that. Yeah. So the expositor wasn't touched on at all with the illegal, or and all of the multiple wives and the women and girls, which would make a big difference in how you're feeling about the topic and the subject. But I look around, I see everybody just sobbing because they could feel the Spirit so strong. They felt the Spirit. They were feeling it was all over, and I'm sitting there angry.
Yeah,
because I'm like, and then that was my first experience of witnessing people being able to gain a testimony of something that wasn't real.
Yeah. That gives me the chills. It's like mind-blowing that we've operated like this, and you're just like, oh my gosh, it kind of freaks you out a little bit, like, well, what is real? But it's like,
what is real?
We create our own realities. That's what's real. Like, we create it.
Exactly. So, I couldn't revere Joseph Smith anymore. I couldn't trust him anymore. I couldn't rely on the doctrine anymore. So, I'd shared with my husband Brady at the time, little things and snippets as I had learned. And when I learned about the second anointing, and I was telling Brady about that, he was like, he's like, well, wait a second, what's that all about? And like, and then Hans Christian Matheson, yeah, like his, I just delve in deep with all the different Mormon stories, and books, Michael D. Quinn, Leonard Arrington, just fact stuff, super safe stuff.
How did you come across Mormon stories?
Mormon stories I came across because I joined a Facebook group. I think it's now called Waters of Mormon, because it was helping with transitioning, or helping you to, not transitioning, it was helping you to make it work and stay and have a community, where you knew all the narrative, you knew all the facts,
but you're going to try to,
but you're still trying to make it work.
Oh.
And so that's where I had learned about Mormon stories. And then I spent a year and a half just swimming, learning, digging down that rabbit hole, and I never found, I could never make sense of all of it. And then I finally made my own conclusion through my studies that Joseph Smith conveniently had revelations whenever he needed somebody to do something. And I saw the pattern of that. And that was just my own observation. And then Brady, one day, we were talking, and he was like, well, do you still believe? I don't.
And didn't he come a little bit more after you? Wasn't he still believing for a while?
He sat with it. I remember the look on his face. And I was so scared because I didn't know how he was going to take it. And like, he married me, you know, we like, everything was, you know, we were sealed together. We married, you know what I mean? Anyway, so he sat with it. He was so sad. And then I asked him, you know, I says, will you please read Letter from My Wife and the CES letter? And maybe we can understand each other a little bit more. And so he didn't have the indoctrination that I did in the church. You know, he didn't grow up with all of that. And so he didn't have all that time to like believe it all the way that I did. So once he had read those and all that, well, before he read those, this was important. And this is what I loved. And I was so grateful for him. He said, Kristel, I love you. You are the most important person in my life. I'm going wherever you go.
That's so beautiful. Oh, if only more marriages could be like that in the church, you know? Like, if you're both believing different things, you can still choose your marriage as number one priority, you know?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
awesome.
So he read the CES letter and the letter from my wife, and then his mind was blown about the Book of Mormon and how the plagiarisms from the different books, and I mean there's just so much more, and you know, things to go down and learn, you know what I mean? But he's like, oh, this is bullshit, I'm done. And then he stopped paying our tithing and didn't tell me. Oh. You know what I mean? So I'm like sitting there like going, okay. You know, so I remember when he finally told me, you know, he was like, I'm not going to support an institution that's not ethically honest. Yeah. Because come on, if it's the truth, again, back to the truth seeking, if it's the truth, it can stand up to anything. And what are you afraid of? Yeah. What are you afraid of? So, So with stop paying our tithing, nothing's changed. You know what I mean? As far as like, I didn't lose any blessings. I didn't, you know, I didn't, you know, I was scared. I mean, I would have to, you know, like, of course, all the indoctrination, then trying to transition and then have your voice, and then all of the moving parts of the relationships with everybody that you have, you know, how do you navigate that, you know? And you have all of these beautiful, you know, or what you thought with your siblings and family, and you know, you all are accepted and loved because you all believe the same thing, right? And then all of a sudden, if you don't have that common ground, then what is there? Yeah.
It's difficult.
Really difficult. And that the dark night of the soul for me, when I realized that the church wasn't what I thought it was. Everything that I had based and strived for and believed, I mean, that it wasn't there anymore, it wasn't real anymore, and I lost everything.
Yeah. I remember that feeling so well. Oh, it's intense.
Yeah. And take some deep breaths. And then it was really hard to navigate telling my parents that we're taking a break because I just couldn't go to church anymore because I would get triggered because it wasn't being truthful. And then what's so ironic in all of this is that I was being obedient, being a truth seeker like my dad and my mom wanted me to be. But it's not their truth. It's not their truth, you know, for them. And I don't want to, you know, make it, you know, be there. But it's just ironic that my dad would always instill that in me. And then I'm portrayed now as the lost one.
When you're just following your dad's counsel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's been really, I've had a lot of loss in the relationships that I loved so much, but now I'm not, I'm either looked at that I was deceived, or that I just want to go play, that I want to go, you know what I mean? We get labeled because they have to make sense of it somehow.
Yeah.
They have to reconcile it. And I know they're having losses. I mean, like, my oldest daughter, Kelsey, she left the church before I knew, I didn't know why, but when I was still in, and I was sitting there, I was so hurt. Because I was like, I just wanted her so much to be in, be with us in the celestial kingdom. I just wanted, and all these things. And then when I had discovered the truth, and when I had shared that with my oldest daughter, and she broke down, she sobbed, and she held my hand. And we had been estranged because of the religion, because she felt unsafe, and I was trying to do the best I could, right? And we held hands and we cried together, and she said, Mom, I knew a lot of this stuff. I was scared. And she's like, I didn't want you to disown me. So with the 7 girls, I want them to tap into their inner light that they've always had.
Yeah.
And that they have a voice. I have my kids question everything. Don't take my word. I'm like, I can share with you my experiences and what I've learned, but you get to learn for yourself, and you get to have that compass, and you get to have that. And it's outside of a priesthood thing. Like, you have that within you.
Yeah.
So I needed a lot of time. I needed this little bit of time, but I'm ready now. And I'm just ready to let go of the fear. And I cannot ever reconcile the church history.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But Brady and I will often will go, would you ever want to go back to, before we didn't know all of this, and no.
Even though it's been so hard.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't change it, although there's been
really
tremendously challenging,
traumatic,
parts.
hard, difficult, ugly.
Yeah.
At points ugly.
Yeah.
And it would bring the sorrow, the anger, the loss,
The fear.
the fear. Yeah. And I finally, just recently, I finally have made peace with myself, because at first I wanted to prove to my family and to everybody, that I wanted to prove to them that you can be happy outside of the church, and do all of that. And then once I let go of the need to prove anything,
yeah, that's a big thing. There feels like we have to prove to them that we're not lost, that we're still happy.
Exactly.
We still have light,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I have more direction and light, and I feel more grounded and directed in my life right now, outside of the church box,
Mm-hmm.
And then
I like how you said that, the church box.
The church box.
Because it is. You're
it is
just
a
in
box.
this little box, and you don't get to experience the rest of the world.
They control all of what you can only grow to what they'll allow you to grow to.
Yeah.
And that's what's so beautiful when you wake up, is that you have a blank canvas, and you get to find your voice. You get to find out, well, what do I like? outside of nobody can tell me that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What do I like? What resonates with me? You know, and like love. Love is the highest vibration. And that's where like, I am love.
Yeah.
And if you want to label that as being under the influence of Satan, if you want to label that as I want to go play, which I had my first glass of wine with you.
Yes.
We will always cherish that time together.
That was so fun.
Hurdles and firsts and learning and evolving. And then getting to a space of gratitude. Because, you know, my path and everything that I went through and everything I learned, even though I was so in, and now I'm like, whoa, you know, I mean, it's been beautiful, and I wouldn't have it in any other way. It's still hard. Because, you know, we live, you know, we're here in Utah. We have our kids going to school with a lot of highly Mormon, you know, highly populated, Mormon populated. But what's beautiful now is I look at, you know what, I had to teach my girls, you know, what, you know, that they get to experience life and question things and do that from a very young age. So they don't have to learn how to do this
at age 40.
Amen.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, and I think that's just a beautiful gift, and they will have an easier transition and a better look on life because they can see through the bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of bullshit.
I'm grateful too that, we stopped it before it got too late. You know, we're so, I'm just so grateful that they're so young, because for us to have to unwrap all this at our age after 40 years of being indoctrinated, it's very challenging.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and like you were there for me when, you know, because we both have Brooklyns.
Yeah.
We're both in Kristel. But when my Brooklyn turned 8, and you know, it was a really hard time because all of my other kids had been baptized, you know, and I remember talking with you. I'm like, well, let's celebrate her. You guys came over. You made a beautiful. I loved that strawberry daiquiri.
The margarita.
I was like, oh. Anyway, but I mean, we were able to celebrate her, and you know, Brady, what we do is we tell our kids, you know, the representation in the Mormon faith, you know, of what that is that you commit to be a better person. And so we talked to Brooklyn about that, you know, let's love bigger. Let's be, you know, just commit to being better. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, I love that.
And so, with teaching and transitioning and navigating that with our children, and then, I just want them to feel connected to themselves.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's so good. And I just feel so grateful. Like, it's like so crazy to me that you moved in right at the time that we were going through this, and to have you just 2 doors away. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, there still is a God. Like, He put you in my life, you know? True, like, oh my gosh, we're so blessed. You in mine.
You know? Right. No, but really, I mean, like, the synchronicities in life, you know, are just so real, and they're so there. Yeah. And you have that. Like, I see more synchronicities outside of the church now than inside.
Totally.
You know? Alignment. And I read, you know, the universe has your back, and I picked my sign for the universe of how I felt guided, and that really helped me tap into me. Yeah. You know?
For sure. I love that. I'm grateful to have a friend like you.
No, I am so grateful.
We can be on this path together.
I am so grateful. I am, like, so grateful to know you and to be on this path. And you were there for me when we had gone to go visit Brady's siblings, and we had a not so positive experience. And I just came over here and I just cried to you, and you were there for me. And I really appreciate that. You know,
Same for
like
you.
how
Like,
we
I remember when I went over to you, like, I'm scared, help me. Like, you guys help me. So yeah, we're there. Like, we can be that for each other, and it's amazing. And I love that there's also quite a few other people in our neighborhood.
That
have also left the church recently, and it just feels
and
like,
that understand the narrative.
We're not alone, and like, oh, this is happening. Like, this is happening whether the church likes it or not. People are leaving.
Exactly.
There are a lot of truth seekers, and they will find the truth, and they're not going to be happy with it.
No.
So.
And yeah, exactly. There's just so so it's a beautiful thing what you and Sean are doing, and you know, with the Mormon Enlightenment, and with stories, and just connecting and helping to reveal the truth.
Yeah. I am so inspired by so many of the other people who have gone before us, like John DeLynn and all the other people that have podcasts that have helped me so much. I'm like, well, I can contribute to that. And it's very fulfilling for me. I love to hear more people's stories, and I love to hear how people are thriving beyond Mormonism. And so it's just very, feels very like fulfilling for me to be part of this right now in my life for this season. I don't know how long I'll want to do this, but right now it's just exactly what I need.
It's exactly, and it's beautiful, and it's perfect, and I honor it. So thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
That's brave. Yeah, it's brave. Not everybody can, not everybody's ready to do this. So.
No.